Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Bill. We're in the Fantasy Trip, the In the Labyrinth game by Steve Jackson Games. We are continuing the IQ spells. We are on IQ 12 spells. We're going to read and see what spells you could select with an IQ 12 wizard or greater and see what they do. So without further ado, let's read into it. 3-hex fire. It's a conjuration spell. It's like the fire spell, but covers up to 3 connected hexes. Costs 2 mana. 3-hex shadow. It's a conjuration spell, just like the shadow spell, but covers up to 3 connected hexes. Costs 2 strength. 2 mana. Analyze magic. It's a throne spell. This spell, if successful, tells the wizard the exact enchantment on any one object. If there are more than one spells on the object examined, this spell will reveal one each time it is cast. Low IQ spells before higher IQ ones, all in the order they are listed in this book. The wizard may specify that he's looking for a harmful or beneficial spells, in which case, if successful, he will get the simplest spell of that type, if any. Otherwise, nothing. Note, as with other detection spells, the GM makes the roll. If the roll is missed, the GM should lie to the wizard about the object. The more by which the roll was missed, the bigger the lie. A roll of a 17 or 18 should produce a real whopper. Cost 4 mana. Blast. Does 1 die of damage to every creature, friend or foe, in the wizard's hex or adjacent to it, except the wizard. Costs 2 mana. Break weapon. It's a thrown spell. Shatters 1 weapon, shield, staff, etc. in the hand of a foe. Does not work on enchanted swords, shields, etc. Constructed with immunity against this spell. So if you're going to have a magical weapon, you probably want to put that immunity on it. Such a weapon will not break on a roll of an 18, though it may be broken deliberately if someone wants to do so. Broken weapons do half damage, rounded down. Broken staffs are useless. Cost 3 mana. Breathe fire. It's a thrown spell. An exceptionally impressive spell, a mainstay of the performing wizard, useful in combat, of course, against primitive foes, and the GM may make a reaction roll to see if they break and run. A wizard who casts the combat version on themselves and demonstrates it in a peaceful manner will gain a +1 on reaction rolls from dragons. They will feel a bit flattered and a bit respectful. The dragon will probably breathe back, though, and the wizard must not lose his nerve. By changing a few words, the spell can be cast in 2 ways. As a show, 1 mana to cast, lasting for 12 turns, and 1 mana per minute thereafter. A cool blue and orange flame, a couple of feet long, can still set flammable things on fire, but not instantly. Will awe an audience or a primitive foe. The combat version. A seething red-orange flame, equivalent in all ways to the breath of a 4-hex dragon, except that since you don't have a dragon's long neck, you can breathe only into or through your front hexes. Will ignite wood and simply incinerate paper and so on. Does 2 dice damage, so 2d6 damage, with a dex roll, as with their own weapon modifiers, to hit. Cost to cast is 3 mana, +1 per turn maintained for the wizard, and 2 mana per breath for the subject. The subject, like a real dragon, can breathe once per turn while doing other things, including attacking. So if you cast it on yourself as a wizard, it'll only cost you once per turn to maintain. If you cast it on the subject, it'll cost 2. I might be confusing that, but that's how I'm understanding it. The prerequisite to this spell is you have to have the fire spell. And cleanse poison. Removes all poisons. It's a thrown spell. Removes all poisons and unhealthful material, i.e. broken glass, from food and drink within a hex. Does not make its subjects nutritious or even tasty. Simply safe to eat and drink. This spell is related to cleansing, but different. It is cheaper to cast, but limited to food and water. The mana cost is 4 to affect a 1 hex area. Drain Strength. I always use this one a lot when I played a wizard. Lets a wizard drain life force from others, humans or humanoids only, to replace lost fatigue or exhaustion from himself or his human or humanoid friends. No mana cost, but each 5 strength drained from another gives only 1 strength to the recipient. Cannot be used to heal damage from wounds, only fatigue or exhaustion, so only mana. The person being drained must cooperate or be subjected, i.e. tied up or unconscious. The victim must never be killed by the spell. If the victim had 9 strength left, the wizard could take 5 away, giving himself only 1 point of mana, but could not take the other 4 away. The backlash would kill the wizard. A wizard cannot make up the 5 strength by draining more than 1 figure. He could not, for instance, take 3 from one victim and 2 from another to give himself 1. The wizard, the victim, and the figure, if other than the wizard receiving the strength or the mana, must all be adjacent to one another. If the wizard fails his dex roll on this one, he loses 1 mana and nothing happens to anyone else. The lost strength is fatigue damage to the victim, not physical injury. If you're keeping track of mana for your characters that are not wizards, I just subtract it from that. But it would be based off their hit points. So their mana total would be their current hit points, their current strength. Eyes Behind. This spell, when cast upon a person, improves, it's a thrown spell, his peripheral vision and coordination, so that he seems to have eyes in the back of his head. All his side hexes will be treated as front hexes, and his rear hex will be treated as a side hex for all purposes. Furthermore, he can see events directly behind him. Mana cost to cast is 3 plus 1 per turn to maintain. It's really good if you're surrounded. Fireball. It's a missile spell. Does 1d6 minus 1 damage for every strength point the wizard puts into it. Maximum 3. So for every mana point put into it, maximum 3, with a minimum damage equal to that strength. Can be used to set fire to flammable objects. It's also good to just nail your target with it. But unlike, say, D&D and Pathfinder Fireball, this is a single target spell, so it's more like Fire Arrow. Freeze. Totally freezes victim, stops all actions, stiffens body for 2 to 12 turns. After the spell strikes, wizard rolls 2 dice. A frozen figure can see and hear. He can attempt to disbelieve. He can even attempt a spell if it is one he can cast without moving. That is 5 below his IQ. But he cannot move at all. Does not work on beings with a basic strength of 30 or more. Costs 4 mana. Friendship. Calms everyone who is within 10 hexes and line of sight of the caster, giving them a +1 on reactions to everyone else affected by the spell for every 2 points of mana the wizard spent on the spell, to a maximum of 4 points, so +2. This spell will not make sworn foes go out drinking together, but it can get them to sit at a table and negotiate. Effects last for 1d6 times 10 minutes. The spell cuts both ways. Under this effect, PCs will not want to murder the NPCs even if that was in their minds before. This spell does not make its subject stupid or even pacific. It will not work if combat is actually going on, nor will it make the guards watch quietly while you remove the idol's eyes. Note also that some people, such as rulers and merchants, may be deeply annoyed if they learn they have been subjected to a mind-altering spell. The next spell is Invisibility. It's a thrown spell. Lets wizards make himself or another person invisible. The counter for an invisible figure is removed from the map. So the marker you're using to track your stuff in actual tactical combat, you remove it from the person that's invisible. An attack against an invisible figure is made at a -6 dex, and of course has no effect if directed against the wrong hex. Invisibility does not make one inaudible or unsmellable, and is no use in the dark except against creatures who see in dark normally. Otherwise, the effect of invisibility on your foes' decks are not cumulative with those of blur, dazzle, shadow, or darkness. Costs 3 mana to cast, +1 for each turn the spell is maintained. This spell does not work on illusions or images. It destroys them. Mage Sight, it's a thrown spell, allows its subject to see objects concealed by blur, invisibility, shadow, or ordinary darkness. Costs 2 mana for 12 turns, +1 per minute to continue. Magic Rainstorm. This one is a conjuration area. Creates a storm 1 megahex in size. Like other creations, it lasts 12 turns. It can stand still or at its creator's command, move at 1 hex per turn, changing shape if necessary. The Magic Rainstorm puts out all fires, real and magical. Fireballs, lightning, and dragon's fire cannot go through it. It has no effect on dragons themselves. They have sufficient sense to close their mouths. Costs 4 mana. A Magic Rainstorm creates 84 gallons of ordinary drinkable water if you can catch it. Pathfinder. Used to choose between 2 paths. The caster uses or improvises a small hanging pointer and invests it with 3 mana. The pointer indicates the one the wizard would choose if they knew all things about both paths at the present moment, though not the reason for the choice. The GM makes a roll against the caster's IQ, not dex. If the spell fails, the pointer will waver. If it succeeds, the pointer will clearly show the path. If both paths are equally bad, the GM will say that the spell failed. If both paths are equally good, the GM will just pick one and say the spell succeeded. On a critical failure, the spell will lie, of course. Pathfinder operates at -2 IQ if a Trail Twister spell has been used by the person sought. The spell may be attempted at a -6 on a choice of 3 paths. It may not be attempted on a choice of more than 3. It may not be attempted more than once within a day to make the same decision for the same area, but it may be attempted any number of times on different decisions. So if you came to different forks over and over again, you wanted to cast it at each new fork, you could. But if you wanted to go back to the same fork, say it was a 3-way fork, and cast it again, it wouldn't give you any new information. Path may sometimes be liberally interpreted. A choice of who to believe might be a path. But the GM does not have to permit an abusive use of the spell and may apply penalties in a questionable situation. This spell may be found in lesser magic item, a silver pointer on a chain such as an arrow, a pointing hand, or a leaping wolf. Start with the pointer itself, which must be finely made and pure silver. So 150, they use the dollar signs, but 150 silver. Then use the serpent torque creation stats. Value of this item is 2,000 silver, and it has the same use limitations as the spell, rolling versus the user's IQ. Repair, it's a thrown spell. This spell will magically repair, as good as new, any simple item of weight less than 5 pounds. Items up to 10 pounds can be repaired by 2 wizards working simultaneously, and so on. The spell will require a broken rope, pot, etc. It will not cure a living being. It will repair a weapon, even if the weapon was magical, but the magic goes out of a weapon when it breaks, and this spell will not restore that magic. It will leave a perfectly good ordinary weapon. All the pieces of the item to be repaired must be available. This spell will also not repair a complicated machine. It just joins simple breaks. For a complex repair, see Restore Device. Page 27. This spell costs 6 mana. Restore Device is IQ 14. Okay. Soothe. Thrown spell. Calms an upset person or animal. Especially useful for crying babies. Of course, there is a reason for the baby to cry. It will start again soon. This spell does not change a diaper, though a properly cast scour would. Cast on an animal, Soothe reduces by 1 die the difficulty of an animal handler attempt. Costs 1 mana. And that ends the IQ 12 spells. So the next video in the spell series will be IQ 13, of course. So until we all game again, guys,